I reckon life has a way of blindsiding you when you least expect it. One minute you're just going through the motions, and the next, the ground's gone out from under you. That's how it was for me on a regular old Tuesday night, hauling the trash out to the curb like I'd done 1,000 times before. My name's Ethan Harper, 35 years old, and up until that moment, I thought I had a pretty decent handle on things. Married 7 years to Lori, 33, living in a little brick house we'd bought together in a quiet subdivision outside Knoxville. Nothing fancy, just a solid life, or so I thought. It was about 8 o'clock, sky already dark, crickets chirping loud enough to drown out the hum of the streetlights. I'd just finished supper. Lori made meatloaf, her go-to when she was too tired to get creative, and I volunteered to take out the garbage. She was in the kitchen, washing dishes, humming some tune I didn't recognize. I grabbed the bags from the can by the back door and stepped into the garage, figuring I'd toss them in the bins and call it a night. That's when I heard her voice, sharp and low, coming from the other side of the garage door that led to the driveway. Lori was out there, sitting in her blue Toyota hatchback with the engine off, door cracked open just enough to let her voice drift out. She did that sometimes when she wanted to talk private-like, away from me or the neighbors. Usually, I'd have kept moving, minded my own business, but something in her tone stopped me dead. It wasn't the words at first, just the way she sounded, like she was unloading something heavy. I set the trash bags down real quiet and leaned closer, not proud of eavesdropping, but too curious to walk away. I don't know, Tara, she was saying, her voice tight like she was holding back tears or anger, maybe both. I just figured he'd be further along by now, you know? We're in our 30s, and Ethan's still just there. Same job at the lumberyard, same paycheck, same everything. Then I look at Ryan, and it's like night and day. My gut twisted up tight hearing that. Ryan, her old high school boyfriend, the one she swore was long gone from her life. Tara, her older sister, cackled through the phone speaker, loud and sharp. Girl, you should have stuck with Ryan. He's got that big contracting business now, probably drives a truck worth more than your house. Lori didn't laugh back, but she didn't argue either. Yeah, well, too late for that. Ethan's fine, I guess. Dependable. But dependable don't exactly set your heart racing, does it? I settled, Tara. He's just so ordinary. Ordinary job, ordinary looks, ordinary in bed too, if I'm being honest. Tara hooted again, and I could picture her tossing her bleach blonde hair back like she always did when she thought she was clever. Well, honey, you got that house almost paid off, right? Hang in there a couple more years, then trade up. Plenty of fish out there better than Ethan Harper. I stood there, trash bags at my feet, feeling like somebody'd sucker punch me in the chest. My wife, my Lori, talking about me like I was some beat-up old couch she couldn't wait to replace. 7 years of marriage, 7 years of me thinking we were a team, and here she was plotting to trade up once the mortgage was clear. My hands went cold, my legs locked up, and for a good minute, I couldn't even breathe right. Ever had that happen? Where your whole body just quits on you because your brain can't process what's hitting it. I don't know how long I stood there. Maybe 10 seconds, maybe a full minute. But eventually I snapped out of it, grabbed the bags, and shuffled out to the curb like a zombie. Lori never saw me, never heard me. She was still yapping away when I slipped back inside through the kitchen door. She looked up from the sink as I walked in, flashed me that same sweet smile she always did, and asked, "Trash all set, babe?" I nodded, forced out a yep, and kept my face blank. Inside, though, I was a mess, heart pounding, stomach churning, head spinning with her words on repeat. Ordinary, settled, trade up. That night, I lay in bed next to her, staring at the ceiling fan spinning lazy circles in the dark. She was out cold, breathing soft and steady, like nothing in the world was wrong. Me? I didn't sleep a wink. Kept seeing Ryan's face, tall, slick, always had that cocky grin back in the day. Kept hearing Tara's laugh, Lori sigh. 7 years, man. 7 years of hauling lumber, fixing leaky faucets, grilling burgers on the back deck, thinking I was building something real. And all that time, she was sizing me up like a used car she regretted buying. Next morning, I got up, made coffee, went to work like usual. Didn't say a word about what I'd heard. But something in me had shifted, hard. I wasn't just hurt, I was pissed. And not the yelling, smashing stuff kind of pissed. The cold, quiet kind that sits in your bones and starts making plans. I didn't know what I was going to do yet, but I knew one thing for damn sure. Ethan Harper wasn't going to be anybody's ordinary punching bag. Not anymore. The days after I overheard Lori in the driveway didn't feel real, you know? Like I was walking through somebody else's life, watching it all unfold from the outside. I'd get up, pour my coffee, kiss her on the cheek before heading to the lumberyard. Same as always. But inside, it was like a storm was brewing, slow, steady, the kind that don't hit with thunder and lightning right away but just keeps gathering strength. I didn't confront her. Didn't yell, didn't cry, didn't even hint I'd heard a damn thing. I just watched her, real close, waiting to see what else she'd let slip. Work was my saving grace that first week. I'd been at Miller's Lumber for 9 years, stacking boards, loading trucks, helping old-timers pick out 2x4s for their weekend projects. It's honest work, pays the bills, keeps my hands busy. That week, I threw myself into it harder than usual. Stayed late to reorganize the back lot, hauled extra loads without being asked. My boss, Hank, clapped me on the shoulder one day and said, "Ethan, you're making the rest of us look bad, son. What's got into you?" I just shrugged, said, feeling restless, I guess. He didn't push, and I was grateful for that. Meanwhile, Lori acted like nothing was wrong. She'd chatter about her day at the dentist's office where she worked reception, Mrs. Coleman's root canal, Dr. Perry's bad jokes, while I nodded along, chewing my food, keeping my eyes on my plate. But I started noticing things I'd missed before. Like how she'd set her phone face down on the counter every night, screen lighting up with text she'd glance at and ignore when I was around. Or how she'd been running errands more than usual, coming home with a bag from the grocery store that didn't seem to match the time she'd been gone. Little stuff, sure, but it piled up quick once I started paying attention. By Friday, I couldn't take the pretending anymore. Not confronting her, mind you. I wasn't ready for that fight, but sitting there like a chump while she played her game. So I did something I ain't proud of but don't regret neither. After she went to bed, I grabbed her phone off the nightstand. She'd always been sloppy with security, used the same passcode since we started dating, 0715, her mom's birthday. Took me one try to unlock it. I stood there in the dark, hard hammering, scrolling through her messages like some low-rent detective. There he was, Ryan. Dozens of texts going back months. Nothing outright dirty, but plenty cozy. "Miss seeing you today," he'd write. "Wish we'd had more time to catch up," she'd reply. One from 2 weeks back said, "Lunch tomorrow?" Usual spot. Another from him. "You deserve better than settling, Lori. Always have." My hand shook reading that, not from sadness but from this hot, tight anger I didn't know I had in me. Then I found the real gut punch. A thread about meeting up at some cafe downtown, dated 3 days ago when she'd told me she was helping a friend move. No friend. Just Ryan. I didn't stop there. Kept digging, found a banking app she'd never mentioned. Logged in. Same dumb passcode, and there it was, a savings account with $15,000 in it, funded by little transfers from our joint checking over the past year. Money I'd been earning, sweating for, thinking we were saving for a new deck or maybe a vacation. Nope. She'd been stashing it away, quiet as a mouse, for God knows what. A getaway fund? A down payment on her trade-up life? I snapped pictures of it all with my phone, every text, every transaction, then put her phone back like nothing happened. Saturday morning, I called my buddy Travis. He's 37, a welder who's been my rock since we were kids fishing the Tennessee River. Divorced himself a few years back, so he knows the drill. I met him at his place, a little rental house on the edge of town, and spilled everything over a couple beers on his porch. "She's planning to ditch me, man," I said, voice steady but low. Heard it straight from her mouth, saw the proof in her phone. Ryan's back in the picture, and I'm just the sucker holding the bag till she's ready to bounce. Travis leaned back in his chair, scratched his beard, and didn't say much at first. That's his way, listens more than he talks. Finally, he nodded and said, "You got evidence, Ethan. That's gold. Don't blow it up yet, though. Get your ducks in a row, money, place to crash, lawyer if you can swing it. She don't know you know, right?" I shook my head. "Good. Keep it that way. Let her think she's still running the show while you figure out your next move." He offered me his guest room if I needed it, no questions asked. Told me he'd help me haul my stuff whenever I was ready. I thanked him, finished my beer, and drove home with my head clearer than it had been all week. That night, Lori smiled at me across the dinner table, spaghetti this time, and asked if I wanted to watch a movie later. I said sure, picked some action flick I didn't care about, and sat there on the couch next to her, feeling like a stranger in my own damn house. She curled up against me, oblivious, while I stared at the screen, plotting. Sunday, I started small. Opened a new bank account online, just in my name, and moved half our checking balance over. Nothing she'd notice right away, just enough to give me a cushion. Looked up divorce lawyers in Knoxville, wrote down a couple names to call Monday. Even dug out my old tackle box from the garage, thinking maybe I'd go fishing soon, clear my head. All the while, Lori was out visiting her mom, or so she said. I didn't buy it, but I didn't call her on it either. Not yet. By the time I went to bed that night, I had a list in my head, not written down, didn't trust paper yet, of what I needed to do. Protect my money. Find a lawyer. Get out before she could trade up on her terms. It wasn't a plan with fireworks or big speeches, just a quiet promise to myself. I wasn't going to let her make a fool of me twice. Lying there in the dark, listening to her soft snores, I felt something shift again. Not peace. Not yet, but a kind of grim determination. The storm was still building, and I was going to ride it out my way. The next week felt like I was living two lives at once. There was the Ethan who got up, went to the lumberyard, came home, ate dinner with Lori, and nodded along to her small talk like everything was fine. Then there was the other Ethan, the one nobody saw, making moves in the shadows, piecing together a way out of this mess. It was exhausting, keeping that mask on, but I didn't have a choice. Travis was right. I had to play it smart, keep her in the dark till I was ready to pull the plug. Monday morning, I called one of those lawyers I'd found online. His name was Greg Dalton, a no-nonsense guy with a gravelly voice and an office downtown. I took my lunch break in the truck, parked behind the lumberyard, and laid it all out over the phone. Lori's garage talk, the text with Ryan, that secret account with 15 grand. Greg listened, didn't interrupt, just let me ramble till I ran out of steam. Sounds like you've got a solid start, Ethan, he said when I finished. Proof's everything in these cases. Keep those pictures you took, and don't tip her off yet. We'll set up a meeting this week. Bring everything you've got. I hung up feeling lighter, like I'd handed some of the weight to somebody else for a change. That afternoon, I swung by the bank after work and locked down my new account, made sure no joint funds could touch it. Moved a little more cash over, $500, just enough to cover a deposit if I needed to bolt quick. Lori didn't check the joint account daily. She'd always left that to me, figuring I'd handle the boring stuff. Her mistake. Tuesday nights when things got weird. Lori came home late, said she'd had to stop by the drugstore for some headache meds. She looked flustered, hair messy like she'd been rushing, and she didn't meet my eyes when she said it. I played dumb, asked if she was okay, even offered to make her tea. She waved me off, said she was fine, just tired, and headed upstairs to shower. Soon as I heard the water running, I grabbed her phone from her purse on the counter. Same passcode, same dumb trust. More texts from Ryan. Great seeing you tonight. Let me know when you're free again. Her reply, soon. Work's crazy, but I'll figure it out. My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth might crack. I snapped pics, put the phone back, and sat there sipping a beer, waiting for her to come down like nothing was wrong. Wednesday, I met Greg in person. His office was small, smelled like old coffee and paper, with a view of a parking lot. I liked him right off, straight shooter, didn't waste time with fancy words. I handed over my phone, showed him the screenshots, the bank stuff, everything. He flipped through it, nodding, then leaned back in his chair. You've got enough here to make a clean break, Ethan. Tennessee's a no-fault state, but infidelity and hidden assets? That'll sway a judge on division of property. House is the big question. Whose name's on the deed? Both, I said. Bought it together 4 years ago. Still got about 30 grand left on the mortgage. He scribbled that down, told me we'd need to appraise it, figure out equity. Said he'd draft separation papers, get me ready to file when I gave the word. Don't rush, he warned. Wait, till you're set. Place to stay, finances split. She'll lawyer up fast once she knows. I left with a folder of notes and a bill for $200. Worth every penny. Thursdays when the first crack showed. Lori was at work, and I was off early, so I stopped by the house to grab some things. Birth certificate, truck title, stuff I'd need if I had to move quick. I was in the bedroom, digging through the safe, when her phone buzzed on the dresser. She'd left it behind, which wasn't like her. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. Text from Tara. Ryan says you're stalling. What's the holdup? No reply yet, but it hit me like a brick. Stalling? On what? Leaving me? Meeting him? I took a picture, locked the phone, and got out of there before she came home. That night, she was different, quiet, fidgety, kept glancing at me over dinner, like she was waiting for me to say something. I didn't. Just ate my pork chops, talked about a new shipment of oak at work, kept it light. After, she said she was going to bed early, headache again. I stayed up, sipping whiskey on the couch, thinking. The pieces were falling into place. She was planning something, and Ryan was pushing. But she didn't know I was ahead of her, not by a mile. Friday, I tailed her. Dumb, maybe, but I had to see it for myself. She said she was meeting a co-worker for drinks after her shift, girls' night, she called it. I told her to have fun, then drove downtown, parked a block from the bar she'd named. Watched her pull up, alone, and walk not into the bar, but across the street to a little Italian place. There he was, Ryan, leaning against a fancy black SUV, all polished up in a button-down shirt and boots that cost more than my monthly pay. They hugged, longer than friends do, and he kissed her forehead, slow and deliberate. I didn't lose it, didn't storm over. Just sat there, took pictures with my phone, watched till they went inside. Then I drove to Travis's place. He was in his garage, welding something, sparks flying like little fireworks. I showed him the pics, told him what I'd seen. She's gone, man, I said, voice flat. Been gone a while, I just didn't know it. Travis shut off his torch, pulled his mask up, and looked me square in the eye. You're doing the right thing, Ethan. She's digging her own hole. Let her fall in it. He handed me a beer, and we sat there till midnight, not saying much, just letting the quiet settle. By Saturday, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't waiting for her to trade up on her schedule. I'd beat her to the punch. Called Greg, told him to start the papers. Texted Travis I'd take that guest room soon. Packed a duffel with clothes and essentials, stashed it in my truck. Lori came home that afternoon, all smiles, acting like the perfect wife. I smiled back, said I was heading out to help Travis with a project. She didn't blink. Didn't know I was already half gone. That night, lying next to her one last time, I felt the storm inside me shift again. Not just anger now, but purpose. I was done being ordinary in her eyes. Time to take my life back. Sunday morning hit me like a freight train. I woke up next to Lori, her breathing soft and steady, and for a split second, I forgot everything. The garage, Ryan, the lies. Then it all crashed back, and I just lay there, staring at the popcorn ceiling, feeling like a stranger in my own bed. 7 years of marriage, and it had come to this. Me plotting my escape while she slept, dreaming of her trade-up life. I couldn't stomach it anymore. Time to move. I slipped out of bed quiet as I could, made coffee, and sat on the back porch with my phone, scrolling through the pictures I'd taken, texts, bank statements, her, and Ryan at that restaurant. Evidence, Greg called it. Ammunition, I thought. Lori wandered out around 9, hair mussed, wearing one of my old Vols shirts. Morning, babe, she said, yawning. You're up early. I nodded, said I couldn't sleep, kept my voice steady. She didn't push, just grabbed her coffee and went back inside. Oblivious. Perfect. First thing I did was call Travis. Told him I was ready to take that guest room, starting tonight. Bring whatever you need, man, he said. I'll clear out the junk today. You sure about this? I told him I'd never been surer of anything. Next call was Greg. Gave him the green light to file the separation papers. Told him I'd be out by end of day. He said he'd have everything ready by Wednesday. Advised me to keep documenting anything suspicious. She's gonna flip when she realizes you're gone, he warned. Be ready for that. I said I would. Packing was simple. Didn't want much, just clothes, my work boots, a few tools I'd bought myself, and my granddad's fishing rod from the garage. Stuffed it all in 2 duffels and a cardboard box, loaded them into my truck while Lori was out running errands again. I knew what that meant now, but I didn't follow her this time. Didn't need to. Instead, I went to the bank, closed out the joint checking entirely, split the last $3 grand 50-50, wired my half to my new account, left hers where she could find it. Froze the credit cards we shared, too. Called it insurance. Back home, I walked through the house one last time. 7 years of memories stared back at me. Scratches on the kitchen table from that time we carved pumpkins, the dent in the drywall where I'd tripped carrying a ladder. Felt like a lifetime ago. I didn't leave a note, didn't make a scene. Just set my house key on the counter next to the coffee maker and walked out. Locked the door behind me with the spare I'd kept in my truck. By 4 o'clock, I was pulling into Travis's driveway, 30 minutes across town. He met me at the door, helped me haul my stuff in, didn't say much beyond, guest room's yours. Beer's in the fridge. Lori started blowing up my phone around 6. First a text, where are you? Truck's gone. Then a call I let go to voicemail. Another text, Ethan, what's going on? Call me. I didn't answer. Kept it silent. Watched the screen light up while Travis and I grilled burgers out back. He didn't push me to talk, just flipped the patties and said, she'll figure it out eventually. I nodded, took a long pull from my beer. By 8, she called 7 times, left 3 voicemails I didn't listen to. Tara texted 2, Lori's freaking out. You okay? Ignored that one too. Monday at work, I kept my head down, stacked lumber till my shoulders ached. Told Hank I was crashing at a friend's for a bit, personal stuff. He didn't pry, just said, take care of yourself, Ethan. Lori showed up at the yard around noon, still in her dentist office scrubs, eyes wild. I saw her through the office window, talking to Hank, gesturing like she was losing it. He came out after, told me she'd asked where I was staying. Didn't tell her nothing, he said. Figured you'd want it that way. I thanked him, clocked out early, and drove to Travis's to dodge her. That night, I finally checked her voicemails. First one was panicked. Ethan, where are you? Please come home. I'm worried sick. Second was mad. What the hell is this? You can't just disappear, call me now. Third was quieter, shaky. I don't know what's happening, but we need to talk. Please. I didn't call back. Texted her once, late, after another beer. I'm safe. Don't contact me for a while. She replied instantly. What's wrong? Come home. We can fix this. I shut my phone off. Fix it? She didn't even know what she'd broken. Tuesday, I met Greg again. Showed him the latest, her texts, the restaurant pics. He said we had a strong case, especially with that secret account. She's been siphoning funds, he explained. That's fraud, technically. We'll use it. Told me the house would be tricky. Joint ownership meant we'd either sell or one of us would buy the other out. I didn't care much about keeping it. Too many ghosts. File when you're ready, he said. She's on the ropes already. I told him to go for it Wednesday. By nightfall, Travis and I were on his porch again, eating takeout pizza. My phone buzzed. Lori, 8 missed calls that day. Then a new text, bank account's frozen. What did you do? I didn't reply. Let her stew. Travis grinned, said, she's starting to feel it, huh? I nodded, feeling something like power for the first time in weeks. Not joy, not yet, but control. I'd walked out on my terms, and she didn't see it coming. That was enough for now. Lying in his guest room later, listening to the crickets outside, I realized I hadn't slept that good in months. The storm was breaking, and I was steering it. Wednesday morning, I woke up at Travis's place feeling like I'd finally grabbed the wheel of my own life. The guest room smelled like old wood and motor oil. He'd been storing welding gear in there till I showed up, but it was mine for now, and that felt good. I made coffee in his beat-up pot, sat on the porch watching the sun climb over the trees, and steeled myself for what was coming. Greg was filing the separation papers today. Lori'd be served at work, no warning. I didn't know how she'd take it, but I figured it wouldn't be pretty. Work was a blur. Hauled lumber, cut boards, kept my hands busy while my mind raced. Around 11, my phone started buzzing. Lori, 3 calls in a row. I let him go to voicemail, figured the server had found her. Sure enough, when I checked on my break, the first message was her, voice shaking. Ethan, some guy just handed me papers at the office. Divorce? What the hell is this? Call me now. Second one was angrier. You can't do this without talking to me first. I deserve an explanation. Third was quieter, almost a whisper. Please, Ethan, I don't understand. Just tell me what's going on. I didn't call back. Didn't know her that yet. Travis met me for lunch at a diner near the yard, greasy burgers, strong coffee, the kind of place where nobody asks questions. I showed him the voicemails, told him the papers were served. He nodded, chewing slow, then said, she's scrambling now, man. You've got the upper hand, don't lose it. Told me he'd seen his ex pull the same stunts when he left, guilt trips, tears, the works. Stick to your guns, he said. She'll try to drag you back in. I knew he was right. Lori was good at playing the sweet wife when it suited her. By afternoon, the call stopped, but the text rolled in. I'm coming to Travis's after work, she wrote. We need to talk. Then, how did you know where I'd be? That one threw me. Did she mean the restaurant pics? Had she figured out I'd followed her? I didn't respond, just told Travis she might show up. He shrugged, said, let her knock. We'll be out back. She don't get in unless you say so. I like that, his house, his rules. Sure enough, 6 o'clock, there's a pounding on his front door. We're on the back deck, grilling steaks, when I hear her voice through the screen. Ethan, I know you're here. Your truck's out front. Travis raised an eyebrow, kept flipping the mate. I took a deep breath, walked inside, and opened the door just enough to see her. She looked wrecked, eyes red, hair wild, still in her scrubs. What is this? She demanded, holding up the papers, crumpled like she'd been gripping him all day. You're leaving me? Over what? I didn't yell, didn't curse. Just looked her in the eye and said, I heard you, Lori. In the driveway, talking to Tara. Ordinary, settled, trade up. Ring any bells? Her face went white, mouth opening like she wanted to argue, but couldn't find the words. Then there's Ryan, I added. Texts, meetups, that secret account with 15 grand. I've got it all. She stared at me, stunned, then stammered. That wasn't, Ethan, you don't understand. Don't. I cut her off. I saw you with him. Downtown, kissing his forehead like I don't exist. Don't lie to me now. She started crying then, big messy sobs, saying it wasn't what I thought. She was just confused, stressed, didn't mean it. I didn't budge. Sign the papers, I said. We're done. Closed the door, locked it, walked back to Travis. She banged a few more times, then gave up. I heard her car peel out, tires squealing down the street. Thursday, the real chaos hit. Tara called me, screaming. You're ruining her life, Ethan. She's a wreck because of you. I hung up, blocked her number. Then my buddy Jake from the yard texted. Lori's telling people you flipped out, left her for no reason. What's up? I told him the short version, caught her cheating, had proof, moved out. He replied, damn, man. Sorry. She's full of it then. Word was spreading, and her story wasn't holding. Friday, Greg called with an update. Lori'd hired a lawyer, some slick guy from Knoxville, but they were scrambling. She's claiming the account was for house repairs, he said, chuckling. Weak excuse. Those transfers started way before any issues. We've got her on the ropes. Said the house was next, market value is down, maybe 20 grand less than we paid. She can't buy you out with her credit shot, he added. We'll push to sell. I told him to do it. That night, I cracked open a beer with Travis, watched the stars from his deck. Phone was quiet for once, no calls, no texts. Felt strange, almost peaceful. Then I heard a car roll up out front. Looked out, Lori's Toyota, but she didn't get out. Just sat there, engine idling, for 10 minutes. I didn't move, didn't wave. She finally drove off, and I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. She's cracking, Travis said, sipping his drink. Give it time. Saturday, I went fishing for the first time in months. Took Granddad's rod to the river, cast a line, let the water wash over me. Didn't catch much, but didn't care. Out there, alone, I felt the weight start to lift, not all the way, but enough. Lori was falling apart, her lies unraveling, and I was standing tall. For once, I wasn't the ordinary guy she'd pegged me for. I was the one calling the shots, and damn if that didn't feel right. The next week was like watching a slow-motion train wreck, Lori's life coming off the rails while I kept my footing, one step at a time. Sunday morning, I was at Travis's, frying eggs in his skillet, when my phone buzzed with a text from Jake. Heads up, Lori's telling folks you cleaned out the bank and left her broke. People are asking questions. I shook my head, showed Travis. He snorted, said, she's desperate, man. Throwing mud, 'cause she's got nothing else. I texted Jake back the truth, split everything fair, froze what was joint, had proof if anyone doubted me. Word of mouth was turning, and I could feel it. Monday, Greg called with news. Lori's lawyer had filed a counterclaim, saying I'd abandoned her and demanding half the house equity plus spousal support. It's a bluff, Greg said, voice calm but firm. She's got no leg to stand on with that affair evidence and the hidden account. Judge will see through it. We're scheduling a mediation next week, keep your cool till then. I told him I would, but inside, I was steaming. Support? After she'd been stashing cash and sneaking around with Ryan? No chance. Work kept me sane. I'd show up at the lumberyard, clock in, haul boards till my back ached, then clock out. Hank noticed I was quieter than usual, asked if I was holding up. Been better, I said, but I'll get through. He nodded, didn't push, just handed me a coffee one morning and said, "You're tougher than you look, Ethan." Meant a lot. Coming from him, he'd seen his share of hard times too. Tuesday night, I got a surprise. Was out back with Travis, tossing a football around, when a car pulled up, not Lori's. Door opened, and out stepped her dad, Bill. Big guy, retired mechanic, always liked me well enough at family cookouts. He walked up slow, hands in his pockets, looking older than I remembered. "Ethan," he said, nodding. "Got a minute?" Travis gave me a look, headed inside. I leaned against the porch rail, said, "Sure, Bill. What's up?" He didn't waste time. "Lori's a mess. Says you walked out, froze the money, filed papers. I ain't here to fight her battles, but I need to hear your side." I took a breath, told him everything, her driveway talk, Ryan, the secret 15 grand, the restaurant pics. Showed him a couple screenshots on my phone. His face hardened, jaw tight, as he scrolled. When I finished, he handed it back, quiet for a long stretch. "Didn't know about Ryan," he said finally. "Or the money. She told us you just lost it, took off. Guess I should have figured there was more." "She's been lying to everybody," I said. "Me most of all." Bill rubbed his neck, sighed heavy. "Her mom and me, we split when she was a kid. Messed her up, maybe. Don't excuse it, though. I'm sorry, Ethan. You didn't deserve this." He didn't ask me to take her back, didn't defend her, just shook my hand and left. Felt strange, having her own dad on my side, but it was something. Wednesday, the house took a hit. Got a call from the realtor. Greg hooked me up with mortgage company, sent a late notice. Lori hadn't paid in 2 months, and they were threatening foreclosure. "Market soft," the realtor said. "We'd sell at a loss, maybe 15 grand under what you owe. She'd have to agree, or you're stuck." I told Greg, who said he'd push it in mediation. "She's drowning," he added. "Can't keep up without your income." Part of me felt bad. 7 years of building that home, gone, but mostly, I was done caring. Thursday night, Lori showed up again. Banged on Travis's door while we were eating chili, hollering my name. I opened it this time, ready. She looked awful, pale, I sunken, clutching a bottle of cheap wine. "You win, okay?" She slurred, swaying a little. "House is screwed, Ryan's gone, I've got nothing. Happy now?" I didn't bite. "This ain't about winning, Lori. You did this. Sign the papers, let's end it clean." She laughed, bitter and sharp. "Clean? You think this is clean? I loved you, Ethan. Just, not enough, I guess." That hit hard, not enough. 7 years, and I wasn't enough. I didn't yell, just said, "Yeah, I got that. Go home." She stumbled back to her car, drove off weaving. I called Jake, asked him to check on her later, make sure she didn't crash. Didn't want her dead, just out of my life. Travis clapped my shoulder after, said, "You handled that like a man. Proud of you." I nodded, but inside, I felt hollow. Not victorious, just tired. Friday, I went back to the river. Cast my line, watched the water ripple, let the quiet sink in. Phone stayed silent, no calls, no texts. Lori was crumbling, her lies catching up, and I was still standing. Mediation was Monday, and I'd be ready. Greg said we push for a quick sale, split the debt, walk away clean. I didn't need revenge anymore, just freedom. Out there, with the fish not biting, I started to feel it. A little piece of me coming back, stronger than before. Monday rolled around, and I walked into that mediation room feeling like a man who'd already fought the war and just needed to sign the treaty. It was a gray little office in Knoxville, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, a long table with me and Greg on one side, Lori and her lawyer, a skinny guy with a cheap suit, on the other. She wouldn't look at me, kept her eyes on the table, hands twisting a tissue into knots. I didn't feel sorry for her anymore, but I didn't hate her either. Just wanted it done. Greg laid it out clean and sharp, the affair with Ryan, the secret account, the photos, the texts, all on the table, copies for everyone. Lori's lawyer tried to spin it, said the money was for emergency savings, claimed she'd been emotionally abandoned first. Greg didn't flinch. 15 grand over a year, hidden from her husband, while meeting another man. That's not savings, that's a plan. The mediator, a tired-looking woman with glasses, nodded, scribbled notes. Lori stayed quiet, face red, tissue shredding in her hands. The house was the big fight. Foreclosure was looming, 3 months behind now, bank ready to pounce. Greg pushed to sell fast, split the loss. Her lawyer argued she should keep it, said I owed her half the equity anyway. What equity? Greg shot back. It's underwater 15 grand. She can't pay it, can't buy him out, look at her credit. The mediator cut in, asked Lori direct, "Can you cover the mortgage alone?" She shook her head, voice barely there. "No, that settled it. We'd sell, split the debt 7 grand each. I'd eat it, move on." She didn't argue. Rest was quick. No spousal support. Greg killed that with the affair evidence. Joint assets were already split. I'd taken my half, left hers. She kept her car, I kept my truck. Signed the papers right there, ink still wet when we walked out. Lori tried to catch me in the hall after, voice small. "Ethan, I'm sorry. I messed up everything." I looked at her thin, worn out, not the woman I'd married, and just said, "Yeah, You did. Take care, Lori. Didn't wait for a reply. Got in my truck and drove. House sold 2 weeks later. A cash deal to some investor flipping foreclosures. Lost 16 grand total, 8 apiece. I took a hit on my savings to cover it, but it was worth it to cut the cord. Lori moved into a rental somewhere. I didn't ask where. Heard from Jake she'd quit the dentist's office, picked up waitressing at a diner. Ryan was long gone, ghosted her once the money dried up. Didn't surprise me. Guys like that don't stick around for the hard parts. I stayed with Travis another month, saving up from my lumberyard checks. Found a place of my own in early June, a one-bedroom apartment 10 miles out of Knoxville, cheap but clean, with a little patio overlooking a creek. Moved in with my duffels, granddad's rod, and a folding chair Travis gave me as a housewarming gift. First night, I sat out there with a beer, listening to the water, feeling lighter than I had in years. No mortgage, no lies, just me. Work picked up too. Hank gave me a raise, 50 cents an hour, nothing huge, but a nod to my hustle. Started training a new guy, showed him the ropes, felt good being the one who knew something. Evenings, I'd fish the creek or tinker with an old radio I'd found at a junk shop, fixing it up for no reason but to keep my hands busy. Travis came by weekends, brought burgers or pizza, said my place had divorced guy charm. We'd laugh, shoot the breeze, watch the Vols on his beat-up TV he'd loaned me. One day, about 3 months after mediation, I ran into Bill again. Was at the hardware store, grabbing nails, when he tapped my shoulder. "Ethan, how you holding up?" he asked. We talked a bit. Lori was struggling but managing, he said. "She's learning the hard way," he added, shaking his head. "You did right, son. Proud of you." Shook my hand, bought me a coffee at the shop next door. Didn't mention taking her back, just wished me well. Felt like a door closing, gentle but final. Then there was Casey. Met her at the creek one evening, fishing with a cheap rod and a bucket of worms. She was 32, a nurse, new in town, rented the apartment downstairs. We got talking. Fish weren't biting for either of us, and ended up splitting a six-pack on my patio. Nothing big, just easy conversation about work, the river, dumb stuff we'd done as kids. She laughed at my story about falling off a dock drunk at 19, told me about patching up idiots like me in the ER. Next week, she knocked on my door with a pan of cornbread, said she'd made too much. Ate it together, watched the sunset. Wasn't love, not yet, but it was something simple, honest, no games. It's been 6 months since that night in the driveway. Half a year of tearing down a life and building a new one. Lori's voice still echoes sometimes, ordinary, settled, but it don't sting like it used to. I ain't ordinary, not to me. Got a job I'm good at, a place that's mine, a friend like Travis who'd take a bullet for me. Casey's around now too, not pushing, just there with her quiet smile and cornbread. I fish more, fix things, live on my terms. Ain't rich, ain't perfect, but it's enough. More than enough. And that's a win I'll take any day.